Hey there, Theory students. Dr. Brazier here. Sorry I'm getting this week's announcement out to you a little bit later than I usually do, but I wanted to make sure I got it to you by this evening. So let's look at session 6. What's going on with session 6? So we are looking at, on the theory end, person-centered therapy, so Carl Rogers, right? And on the skills end, we're looking at the skill of reflecting feelings, which is one of my very favorite. I have a few opinions about it, and so we'll talk about that in a minute maybe. But this says, as we continue to build upon our developing counseling skills, we continue to move up the pyramid to the vital active listening skill of reflecting feelings. Behind the client's words, story, thoughts, and behaviors are emotions and feelings. Being able to accurately reflect the client's feelings continues to help you as the counselor understand the client's experience and facilitates the therapeutic relationship. Further, by accurately reflecting clients' feelings, counselors can help clients gain insight into their emotional experiences. So this session will also focus on person-centered theory and techniques, and we'll examine how this theory can be integrated with the Christian faith. So what are you reading and viewing this week? You're reading in your TAN book, Chapter 8, Person-Centered Therapy. In your Ivy and Zalaquette book, you're reading Chapter 7, Observing and Reflecting Feelings, the Heart of Empathic Understanding. And then in your Corey book, you're reading Chapter 7, Person-Centered Therapy. You're going to be viewing a couple of videos by Dr. Fiedler. So the first is about person-centered theory and therapy, and the second is about listening for feelings and reflecting feelings. I want to say a couple of things here. First of all, if a client tells you what they're feeling and you reflect that back to them, that's actually not reflecting for feeling. It is technically, I guess, but really isn't it reflecting for content, right? You're saying back to them what they've already told you verbally. They've explicitly told you what they're feeling, right? I think of reflecting feeling a lot of times as not only reflecting what the client is telling you they're feeling, but what their body language, their tone of voice, the volume of their voice, all of those micro indicators of what they're feeling. Even what's happening inside of you can often be an indicator of what the client is feeling if your empathy skills are strong. That you're reflecting what you're observing, what you're sensing that they feel, not just what they're telling you they feel. So that's why it is considered like a higher skill set, higher level skill than something like reflecting for content. And not that reflecting for content isn't vital as a skill. It's just they sort of tend to build on one another and become more and more advanced as they go up. So that's that skill. I find that some people, I believe empathy is a superpower. I believe that people who are highly empathic naturally often gravitate to this field, often find that people in their own lives for a long time have utilized them as a safe place for listening, because they can tell they're being felt with and understood, that the person is willing to put themselves in their shoes. So they sort of people gravitate a lot of times to people who are naturally empathic. So a lot of times counselors in training show up with the natural skill of empathy and can pretty easily identify the feelings and verbalize them in like role play partners and skill setter videos, things like that. That tends to be a skill that a lot can do. Now, those aren't quite exactly the same skill. A person could have high empathy, but not a large emotional vocabulary. So their emotional, like their, instead of, IQ, you've heard EQ, their emotional quotient, I guess, would be a little bit lower, because even though they can sense what the other person is feeling, they don't necessarily have the language to really capture quite the right word. But a lot of times, if we're even in the ballpark, our clients can tell we're trying to feel with and sense with, and it means so much that it's almost a relief in their brain to feel felt. And so that right brain to right brain connection. So even if we don't have the perfect language to like really capture exactly what the client is feeling emotionally, we can get in the ballpark and they still feel felt. They still feel cared for. Now, I want to say something for those of you who find that you're not naturally empathic, because sometimes counselors in training come in and that's not a skill set that is very high in them. That is something that can be practiced and improved upon. I'm the master teacher for the empathy training elective. Empathy can be trained up. A lot of times what blocks a person's empathy is not necessarily an inborn trait. Although I do think that there can be some hereditary factors where a person just tends to be super left-brained and cerebral and cognitive rather than more right-brained, like they're just sort of further on that end. But a lot of times what happens is trauma can cause us to block our feelings. If you in childhood, and I'm not just talking about what some would call big T trauma, which you'll learn about in the crisis and trauma class in the spring. I'm not talking about big single events that one can point to. I am sometimes talking about the trauma that's experienced in childhood with like attachment wounding, when we as children don't feel that someone else is going to be there for us and feel with us as little ones, then the pain of that is excruciating for kiddos. To not feel like someone is willing to care when they hurt and to some lesser degree, like be with in that moment and really feel with a little bit. And they feel discounted, ignored, down put, diminished. And then that's a very excruciating pain because it gives the message of you're all alone in this, kiddo. And that's really hard for a little one's body, for their nervous system to take in, much less their mind. So think how effective a coping strategy it would be to be able to shut down those feelings altogether and not feel. So if you struggle with empathy, I'm not saying you're a survivor of childhood trauma or attachment wounding. I'm not saying that. I don't know you, but I am saying it's something worth considering. Maybe I was born a more empathic person, but I was hurt. And this coping strategy of always going cognitive, shutting feelings down and preferring the cognitive is how I survived that pain. So just a little self-awareness around that as you try to gauge where am I in this skill and where would I like to be. People tell me that are strongly empathetic, I'm too empathetic. I don't believe there's any such thing. And I say this in the empathy training class too. There's no such thing as too empathetic. No such thing. Empathy is a superpower. Like any superpower, it needs to be trained up. If you like superhero backstory movies, you'll know that when a superhero has a superpower and it's not yet trained, it can wreak havoc in their life and in the lives of the people around them until that superhero gets the training that they need to control it well, to use it appropriately, and to not let it, a lot of times to not let it like backlash and harm them, right? So that's the same, I believe, with empathy. People who say I'm too empathetic, what they mean by that often is I take on the feelings of others. I'm like an emotion sponge, but I don't know how to wring myself out. And the other person leaves and they feel better because someone cared with them and felt with them, and I truly did, but then I'm left and it's like glommed on me and I can't get it off me. And so I would highly encourage you, if that's you, to consider the empathy training course or to talk to me about unburdening strategies that can help you release the burden that you empathically assumed. Because it's not yours to carry. Once they're gone, empathy does no good. It's not helping anybody. So hopefully that is a little bit of a intro into the idea of empathy. But anyways, but our emotions tell us about our wants and our needs. They are meant to put us into motion, emotion, to put us into motion, to get our good wants and needs met in healthy, positive ways. If we ignore our emotions, we also ignore what we truly want and need, and we do that to our own peril and to the peril of those around us, because it is unhealthy to ignore our wants and needs and pretend as if we don't have any. That's very unhealthy. And it can lead to lots of broken coping strategies, distractions, and it's not what's best for us or those who love us, those we love. So, helping our clients identify what they're feeling, even if they've coped by not knowing what they're feeling, can actually help them figure out what they want and need. And in practice, as we're identifying their feelings and reflecting them, and they are getting used to, oh, this is what I'm feeling. This is the word, and this is what happens in my body. And oh, this is that feeling. And they're reconnecting with their emotions after having disconnected from them. Then a lot of times they're becoming increasingly able, because they're getting better at identifying and understanding what they're feeling, they then have more choice to take action to get those, the emotions pointing to the need, the want and the need, and they can take action to get that good want or need met in a healthy way. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of late here. I hope I'm not rambling, but it's really important. That's why it's important, is because as long as a person stays ignorant of what they're feeling emotionally, they also are largely ignorant of their wants and needs, and so cannot take action to get those met in positive and healthy ways. Okay. They also want you viewing some video here. They have the link and the transcript, and then it's available for download as well. There's a case of Stan video in Mind Tap, so you'll go there. That's going to take about 15 minutes. Your FICIP is from Luke 11:17 through 35. It says, Jesus offers us a glimpse here of profound human contact, engagement with the heart of another person that moved him deeply. The Greek word here describes weeping over the grief experienced by another. It indicates a quiet shedding of tears rather than Mary's loud lament. He hurts for Mary and Martha, and he allows them to see some of his pain. Consider the following. How does Jesus enter into the pain of Lazarus' sisters? How does Jesus reflect back to Mary and Martha their feelings? What does Jesus do to steady himself so that he could both enter their pain and feel with them while also not getting absorbed into it? And how is this passage instructive for you as a counselor to be? In other words, how did Jesus model this superpower of empathy beautifully, not only because he engaged with Mary and Martha as they were grieving the loss of their brother, he engaged with them empathically, but he didn't get overwhelmed in it. He didn't get so grief-stricken that he was sitting in the dust weeping and the women were having to come and comfort him, right? So he has this very healthy way of empathizing where he uses his superpower well because it's trained up. Okay. We have a discussion this week. Hopefully, those of you who can join us for the live discussion synchronously over Zoom, you have that. And if you do, remember you're just doing 5 bulleted talking points. You're turning that in beforehand to show you prepared, and then you are, and then you're showing up and participating fully the entire hour in the synchronous Zoom. Participating, keep in mind, means that you actually speak, you've got your camera on, you look professional, all the things, as if you were coming to a physical classroom. If you can't make it to our synchronous Zoom, then you'll be completing the asynchronous discussion thread. And so you'll have your initial post submitted before Wednesday at midnight Mountain Standard Time. And then you'll have all the responses, a minimum of 3, remember, to your classmates. You'll have all of those sent to them before Sunday, midnight Mountain Standard Time. And then let's look at what the discussion is, what the prompt is. So this says, Jesus is reflecting feeling. So it goes back to the FICIP, yes? So it says, read John 11:17 through 35. And as you reflect on the story of Jesus coming to the place where his friend Lazarus had died and his encounter with Mary and Martha, please address the following prompts. So notice there are 3 here. So if you're joining the live synchronous Zoom, you need to make sure you do a bulleted point for each of these and then 2 more from these. So maybe you do 2 on 1 on the 2 on the first bulleted point, 1 on the second, and 2 on the third. It has to equal 5, but you can break those down how you like as long as you hit each of these bulleted prompt points at least once. So this first one says, how does he experience and reflect the feelings of those around him? The second says, how does Jesus here demonstrate a person-centered posture? And the third one says, how do you experience Jesus personally as you read the story? How might your experience of Jesus shape and inform your engagement with patience, from the Latin patiens, one who suffers? Now, I want you to think about the fact that even though this is a FICIP discussion, the rubric requires, whether it's a synchronous Zoom discussion or asynchronous written thread, the rubric is going to require that you use sources from our assigned reading and then exterior sources as well. The rubric for discussions always do. Please consider using a Bible commentary on any FICIP discussion. Look this story up. See what you can learn new about it. You may have read it. You may have read this story a million times. You may have read it in multiple iterations. You're like, yeah, I've seen this in the NIV, and I've seen this in the, ESV, and I've seen this in the King James, and I've seen this in the New King James. And sure, absolutely. But that's not the same as looking at a Bible commentary or Bible dictionary and diving deeply into what does this text mean? What did the original Greek read like? And what were the words that stand out? And what did they mean? And where other places in Scripture were those words used like that? And what can this tell me? And inviting the Lord to show you and teach you something new about the story. Let this story come alive for you in a new way. I would love that. And I'm looking forward to our discussion. It's been so many weeks. Okay, you've got Skill Setter this week, so you'll click on the Skill Setter link. Remember that I only grade 1 out of the 3, but I encourage you, please practice all 3. Please look at my feedback. I send out feedback videos, and I give you personalized feedback for every Skill Setter that you submit. So please make sure that you are looking at that and growing. And then you have person-centered inventory. You're used to those. And the study practice questions, you're used to those as well. All right, it's a lot going on this week. It usually is with this class. But I'm going to be working on giving you Skill Setter feedback early so that you can have it before you launch into the next Skill Setter videos for Reflecting for Feeling. And I'm also going to be trying to grade your role plays. Please note that I try to watch, if I can, every single minute of every single role play and give you feedback, because even though I appreciate you showing me, hey, Dr. Brazier, focus in on this timestamp, and I will, but I try to watch the whole thing and give you feedback. I just want to be as helpful to you as I can. All right, I appreciate y'all so much. I'm available for office hours this week as usual. You can reach out to me if you need anything. I'll try to be here, and I'll do my best to help. All right, thanks, y'all. Bye.